All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the final formal class for the summer semester. So, like I put in the announcement and sent all of you an email that in terms of the summer semester, we have week and a half. I think officially the summer semester ends middle of next week, 18th or 19th. But we have essentially, I'm giving you 2 full weeks to work through any leftover assignments, and then finishing and wrapping up with the research video, which is an opportunity to bring everything together, put them together as a research narrative. And I would like to talk about that video project today, so that we all are on the same page and you have a sense of what's expected in that assignment. So these 2 weeks, week 9 and the coming week, week 10, for you essentially would be a work week, work sessions to finish up assignment 3, which is due tomorrow midnight, and then bring everything together in the research video. To help you do that, I have posted a few examples, some mostly from previous research methods classes as examples. Again, they can be refined, make your video, make your own ideas, use your ideas to do that. And I think there is one video, the first one, which is not from research methods, but shows you the process or a technique that you can use to do the video, which is not refined, not completely digital. You don't have to have voiceover or other software, voiceover PowerPoint or voiceover PDFs. You can simply do it through handheld device and some printouts. And it's not required you have to do it exactly that way, but we will talk about some ways to work that out. So that's something I would like to talk about, the focus of the next 2 weeks on the research video, the last assignment. But before I do that, I would like to go around and see, for most of you who had submitted your draft research assignment 3, the presentation 3, till late last night, whatever I saw, I gave all of you feedback. Some of you I know have not had a chance to submit the drafts yet. For those of you or others, if you have any question on presentation 3 as you're working on it to submit it, I am happy to take it now. Can't hear you, Max. No. Can others hear Max? Yeah, I'm getting some. Yeah, I can hear. Yeah, I can hear now. No, we lost you. Sorry.
I think that was me you heard.
Oh.
I was just trying to say no. I couldn't hear Max.
Okay.
All right. I will.
Actually, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I said like 3 days ago. Received any comments yet?
Did you submit the draft in the assignment, or was it only in the?
No, that's what I was gonna ask. Question form. Should I submit it in the assignments tab as well?
Please.
And then,
yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. All right.
Yeah, it's. I know I have been giving all of you trouble that submit here, submit there. I know it's easier just to put it in one place. It's just that it's much easier in the assignment for me to look at the PDF and immediately give you the comments there, which I can't do in the discussion board. I have to download it, open it in Acrobat Writer, write it there, again, upload it. So it's just inefficient from both ends.
Okay, cool. I'll go ahead and do that then. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to mention anything that was hard in assignment 3 or context, or I'm fine if you, I will look at it and give you a comments as soon as I can.
Yeah, I noticed Sophia, she's in this class right now, did constituents. They had, I don't remember hearing anything about differentiation. It was only 3 contextual elements,
Right.
and then you break it down. But
Yeah, I think in her case, she was looking at the constituents and the different users as a context. So that's something, I mean, some of the discussions that I prompted her to really define how constituents become context, right? What aspects of the constituents? Is it demographics? Is it their needs? Is it their programs? Like there are different ways. There's not a single way of defining this is the context, right?
Yeah.
Or this is the user. So I think that's very individual for each of you. So I think that's a good discussion to have, whether it's constituent or whether it's material or whether it's demographics or whether it's even physical condition on the site.
Yeah.
Whatever you think presents a critical context for the project that has influenced the design in case study, or that could or would influence your design or research project. Talk about it, write about it, show it how, illustrate it using images, diagrams. I mean, Sophia is here, so Sophia, if you want to respond to that, you're welcome to do that. Okay, we'll see if Sophia comes back. Okay, her mic is not working. Max, do you have any other question?
I think that was it.
Yeah, so it was not required to use constituent, or I think some of you talked about audience, but it's okay to say that certain audience or certain way of looking at a constituents become a context. That's fine, as long as you explain, elaborate, and specifically illustrate it.
I also
Anybody else? Okay.
Sam had it as well. Those were just 2 of the presentations. That's
Okay.
positive. Yeah.
Anybody else with questions regarding research presentation 3, assignment 3?
I have a question. It's Nora.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you a little bit more feedback on my presentation for 3. I did add the architect that I had chosen talks about how they consider culture and how they also consider site.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what would be the next thing to do to better my presentation from the comments provided.
Yeah, I will take a look at your PDF and give you quick comments. But in general, I think when you are doing the case study analysis, in your case, like you were saying that the architect was looking at culture in a specific way, or site in a specific way, site conditions in a specific way as a context. I mean, for case study, I mean, for all of you, it should be in terms of explaining, unpacking, elaborating, describing. You have to think in a simple way that, okay, if it's culture, this is how they're talking about culture, and see if there are images you can bring, and then to highlight that specific way of elaborating culture or a very specific cultural context. Culture is a big thing, right? I mean, race and ethnicity could be a culture. We can look at history and historic heritage as a cultural aspect. I may look at certain behavior as cultural practices. So depending on how and what that architect or firm is looking at in terms of culture, a lot of you are working on suburban landscape or reaction to suburban landscape. I mean, it's a manifestation of processes and modes of production and consumption and wastage. And that's a cultural idea about how we live and how we consume, how we produce, and how we think about wastage. So in what way they are looking at cultural practices or culture, it would be good to make that specific and how that influences their design. I think the next step would be obviously to connect some of these, including the aspect of program and two other contextual elements. Again, it could be those same thing you're analyzing in your architect or designer culture, and then site, and then you have to use the program for your project and see how those three things present an important context for your hypothesis or your possible outcome. So that would be the next step. I mean, I will look at your additions in your PDF and give you more specific comments, hopefully by tonight, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Anybody else? Research presentation 3 or assignment 3? Any? Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, Chris.
With program and stuff, when we're analyzing program, are we strictly looking at just the program in general, or are we to try to kind of shed what program normally is and try to think just past that or outside that? Because things like society or sociological influences or political influences can be a context on its own, right? And not necessarily strictly for program.
Right. Yeah, so I think, I mean, that's why I gave you some readings on context and specifically on programs, looking at or analyzing Kulhas and Shumi and how they use, define, interpret program. So I do want you to, based on those readings and your own interpretation of their readings, I mean, those readings, I want you to not just look at program how typically we do. Like, I mean, sometimes programs are just the programmatic briefs that I'm doing a house and it needs to have a dining space and a living room and a family room, right? So that's one way of thinking about programs. But if you consider Shumi, think about timeline and different, he talks about events, right? And some events, we can think about frequency, events that happen daily, if I connect that back to a residential space, to events that happen maybe once a week or events that happen once a year. Can we design spaces? Can we design residential buildings thinking about these events where the events then become or dictate the programmatic context? Now, in your case, when you're saying the social, sociological, or political forces, I would like to know how politics, society, social practices, social perceptions, or however, what elements you're looking at them, right? How do they influence programmatic decisions? So that would be a responsibility to say that this is how social constraint or social context become a critical programmatic influencer, or it influences programmatic decisions in this way. So I do want you to expand on the notion of program, if you can. I mean, you can start with simple programmatic needs that are given by client, or that comes when we do programmatic analysis, bubble diagrams, or proximity analysis. But based on the readings, yes, I want you to experiment with it and go past those typical assumptions or definitions of program and tell us how, in a specific way, program or programmatic thinking could be important, for example, in your project. Now, I'm not looking for 20 different ways you can look at programs, right? We have around 30 students in the class, and each of you can say very different way of approaching programs. So I don't want from each of you exhaustive analysis of program in 100 ways. If you are going past the basic premise of program and giving us a definition, interpretation of program in a specific way, let's say in your case, socio-political way of influencing and defining program that causes or that leads to very specific design decisions, you have the scope of being very specific and giving an example. And it could be, and I want you to become very narrow and specific and detailed that how a political or socio-political act or a cultural process, not both, one of them could influence programmatic decision. So if you're going beyond, be specific, be narrow, because it's not, I don't want you to expand and be vague and be generic. Be very specific. And that was actually a lot of my comments to many of the projects, that they were all good starts, they were all good analysis, but we needed to, now that you have attracted my attention in terms of good analysis, tell me a little more, give me an example, do a diagram that highlights that specific way of understanding the context. And then, of course, I'm interested to look at how do you apply them, and then think about program for your project.
Okay, so I know somewhere in the assignments when you were giving like a brief breakdown of how we should approach it, that you had suggested that possibly we would have to think about program.
Mhm.
In my project specifically, I talk about civic buildings in general, right? And an approach to designing civic buildings, so they could be city halls, they could be libraries, et cetera, et cetera. It's just trying to establish a framework to kind of lead you to eventual design of different types of scales, sizes, and uses. So I'm finding it a little, and this is the reason why I'm bringing a program, I'm finding it a little difficult to kind of stay general with it without having a specific program in mind that kind of...
Yeah, I think you need to narrow it down to one kind of civic building. I don't think you can continue to say that, okay, I'm interested in civic buildings. It can be library, it can be city hall, it can be a public works building. Yes, it can be, but I think even if we were doing a semester-long thesis project, I think the smart way to address would be to pick up one type of civic building or narrow it down into one civic building. That doesn't mean you cannot later generalize to larger civic buildings, but that's a methodological approach where you can test out a lot of things. When it's okay, I'm really interested in public library, and this is how public libraries are looking at programs. You can look at case studies from history to present, that how programmatic needs have changed in public libraries. And you could have gone to design a public library. I'm giving an example, not that exactly you have to do that. But I mean, if we keep in the realm of general civic buildings, I mean, it could be many things under the sky, and it will be very difficult for you to devise specific methods to evaluate, gather information, and then specific decision. I mean, we cannot, for example, if it is a design project, we cannot design a generic civic building. I mean, you can create a new typology, and you can say that a new typology is a municipal building, which is also a community center, which is also a public library, which is also a public works. And that would be an interesting project, but would be very complex. And I don't know if that's your intention. But I think, I mean, your question about civic buildings and its scale and the iconic nature related to its use and design, I think can be explored by taking a very specific case or type of civic building.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, good. So I will review back the assignment 3 under the assignments. And some of you mentioned Max. I think Nora, you mentioned you have files or updates or additions. So others, if you put a draft tonight and you want very quick feedback before you submit the final, please let me know, because other than these two, I know that there are additions. I need to know, because tomorrow is the finals, or work on your final assignment 3 and submit it. It's not required at this point that you have to submit the draft if you have not. And so work on the finals. But Max and Nora, I will look at your updates or your original submission in case of Max and give you a quick feedback tonight. So that's regarding presentation 3, which is the final, again, is due by tomorrow midnight. So I would like to take some time now and go over the presentation 4 or the research video. Let me share my screen. And I want to share one of the videos. Can you guys tell me if you can hear the video?
So we were looking at lakes initially when we started our.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a short 3-minute video. Let's watch it. And then I want to discuss certain things.
So we were looking at lakes initially when we started our study. When we went into looking at the essence, though, we were talking about things such as edge conditions, the idea of carving or removal, which is essentially what a lake is, right? It's the removal of land. The idea of void. Mirroring. If we mirror a lake, it's essentially a hill, but then you also have depressions on each side that essentially become lakes. What's its relationship to the land? I think more importantly, for our project, what's the relationship, we'll say, between the cottage and the water? How does it touch the water or skim over the water? Does it go into the water? Does it ignore the water completely?
Our initial research of the monuments was mostly relative to key features we believe to be valuable for a beginning exploration. These included geometric principles that could be replicated in various combinations to create voluminous space with minimal fragmentation, but still keeping to the initial form of the monument component.
Based on Friedman's models, we started creating our own models, and from 2 components we created 3 types of lattice structures: the diamond, triangle, and square. So we combined many components of them, created 2D models, and also 3D models. Connections away, and we flattened the structure. This is how we came up with the mesh. By using a mesh, we created a net.
So in the development of the letter, we first started out by looking at letters in the two-dimensional form, and just sort of seeing what then we could pull out of them, whether we extrude them or change them. So from there, I guess just refining this model is where we're going to go. So that's it for now.
This is our retreat. I made this shirt too.
We're talking about, it's only the first day of 3 days and we're losing it already.
Sheer sort of extravagance of these forms.
Okay, so I mean, in terms of the content, it's completely unrelated, and I mean that you can ignore. But what I want you to focus on in terms of learning, and that this video is actually uploaded in this week's material, it's the first video narrative, is as an example of the process of doing a video, and that's the basic expectation. It doesn't have to be high resolution. It doesn't have to be completely still and perfect. You can just do that using all the materials you have produced so far, right? The 3 presentations. You can print them out, pin up on the wall, or put it around the table. And just take a handheld device, whether it's a tablet or a phone, and you can take that handheld device from image to image or argument to argument, and talk on it, or talk using that, present your verbal presentation using that. You can do some test runs and see how it's working. Then you can edit them out. The example you saw, it was actually from a critical practice 3 years back, and it was a group project, team project. There were 3-4 voices, different sub teams did different things. They all came together, and then it was digitally edited. So I'm not saying you exactly have to do that. There are other examples in the video list. If you look at, some are clear voiceovers using PowerPoint or PDF. Some are more taken using printout materials on the wall, but taken with a more video on the tripod with somebody standing in front of the camera. So there are many ways to do the video, but what I'm trying to say is that you don't need to spend too much time on figuring out how to do a professional's level video. And I'm not going to evaluate you or grade you on video technology, right? So the example you saw, all the text was not clear or visible, and that's okay, as long as the images and the drawings and the diagrams are visible and relating to what you're talking about. So it can be a kind of a hacked DIY, low resolution, low res video, and that's perfectly fine. I want you to focus on a week or 10 days that you have, right? Because it's a quick turnaround. If you want, submit the draft video by coming Sunday, so that I can look at it, give you a quick feedback, and then the final video is due the following Sunday on 22nd. It's a quick turnaround. So I want you to focus on, what do you want to talk about? How do you want to package discourse materials, methods materials, and materials on the context? Are you going to do a very linear presentation that, okay, I started with discourse, and then we went to methods, and then this is how we are testing, and this is the proposition, and these are the context? Yes, could be done in that way. Sometimes you may start with the proposition and the context, connect it back to discourse, and show how you want to test that using methods, and then go back to the discourse. So there are different ways of using the material. It doesn't have to be linear. You can start anywhere you want. You can end at anywhere you want. You can start in one place, touch everything, and come back to that place. So the key becomes, what story about your project you want to tell. The second important thing is that this research video is about your project. However rudimentary, how much ever kind of very initial, sketchy ideas you have about your project, they're all powerful, they're all good. So I want you to make the focus of this video you and your ideas, your project, your propositions, your possible outcomes, what you are thinking about, how it can be tested, what is your position, how it connects to some of the important elements for context of your project, not the case study. So please don't start and end the video with case studies, right? You can start with a topic that you're interested in, but the primary focus should be your project. I'm not asking you to completely eliminate the case study. The case studies can be there. Case study analysis of discourses, methods, and context can be there, should be there. but they should be secondary element as how case studies are, precedent studies are. So introduce your topic of interest, your position, talk about your context, and maybe say that we looked into this case study and that helped you understand how site can be an important context. But then immediately switch to what did you learn and how you are applying and thinking about site for your project. So the case study materials are important materials that you have done and learned from, but they should not be the primary highlight or focus. So these are two important things for the video. You can do the video in any ways. Low tech, low res is fine. Number two is the focus of the research video should be your project. So you need to think about, you are presenting a storyline for your project. You're presenting, think about if you're presenting in a little more than a quick elevator speech or pitch, but not more than 9 minutes. So you have a little bit of time, but it needs preparation. You cannot just think that, okay, let me just spend time in finishing, revising the 3 assignments again, and I will have 1 day to do the video. It won't have a good outcome. So I want you to think it as an iterative project. It would need preparation, it would need time, it would need organization, it would need 2-3 trials or more to see what you are talking, how you are talking. Are you able to manage everything and organize everything with a good flow of a storyline within the 9 minutes? And I don't want it to be 14 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And one of the video example you will see is 14 minutes. And it was a good video, but I deducted grades for that student because it was over time. So again, focus on packaging and talking about the content. The content should be there. You all have, and you will have by tomorrow. If there are some quick edits you want to do based on my comments and grading in presentation 1, 2, as well as 3, which would be upcoming soon, that's fine. But it's not about starting from scratch and redoing assignments 1, 2, and 3. I really want you to focus on talking about the project, the narrative, the storyline. Okay? Questions?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Nora.
So you're saying not to pick a topic, but we gotta use presentation 1, 2, and 3 and incorporate our design.
Well, I think all of you have selected a topic from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
The research presentation 1, research presentation 2, research presentation 3. Along with the case study, each of you have developed your position and hypothesis, your methodological framework, strategies, tactics to test those, and your contextual elements to frame your project and think about. You have thought about possible research or design outcomes and propositions. So that's already there. I'm not saying that the video needs to complete that design. You're not designing the project. You're not doing the project, but you are presenting. You're not doing any additional new content. The contents are the contents you have already done or you're finishing in case of presentation 3 in those 3 presentations, 1, 2, and 3. I want you to talk about them and highlighting the discourses connected to your topic and your research and or design position, the methods, tools, tactics that you can use to test, evaluate, gather information, and then a possible outcome. I'm not saying a design solution, a possible proposition and possible context of your project, which is essentially research presentation 3 for your design project. Now, to help talk about those three aspects, to help talk about certain contextual elements or a certain methodology or a specific discourse, you can refer to the case studies and your analysis and what you have learned from it. But the research video primarily should be about giving information about your topic, your discourses, your methods, your context propositions, and your propositions.
Okay. So it would be essentially getting the information we grabbed from the architect we chose, the information and research we gathered, and then applying it to how we would address it.
Right, but the application is the focus. So I would say if we think about real estate, amount of time in the video, I would like to hear 60 to 70% about your application and maybe 30 to 40% about how you used the case studies and what you learned from the case studies and how you analyzed and how it helped you to do your application.
Okay.
And also
Understood.
the flow, right? I don't want to hear a video that starts with a case study and ends with a case study. I mean, then the focus is the case study.
Mm-hmm.
So the case study now for research video should be a helping hand, a crutch, a reference. But all those information should help you talk about a possible application. I mean, again, the possible application, you all have talked about it in various extent in all the three presentations. So it's not something new. It's just that you're presenting the information and packaging it in a new medium. That's the video.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Question. So I was actually planning on kind of touching on the case study first. So sure, it could be like anywhere between 30 to 40% of the full presentation, but kind of like, you know, kind of establishing that as more or less the framework and then going straight into my research interest and with research interest.
Yeah, I
That
don't
should be sufficient.
I would not do strictly that linearly. I think, I mean, though that's how that's how you learned in the class, but I want you to make your project, your research, kind of the primary subject of the video. So think about when I'm listening to a news channel, right? Or if I'm reading a newspaper headline, the headline is the highlight, right? So if the headline is about the case study and then the whole article is about your project, I may have a complete wrong perception what is the highlight. So that's why I'm saying that this is about packaging. This is about presenting your information. So you can you can use the case study more initially to back and forth to establish certain things logically to guide your reader or your audience that's why you are going to talk about 3 or 4 things for your project. But I still think the introduction, the first 5 minutes, first 2 minutes should be about your project, your topic. Why is it important? And then get to the case study, and I would even think back and forth that I used this case study and learned this, and I am going to talk about this thing in my project. I look at this aspect of the case study and I'm going to apply in this way in my project. And that's how I think you should finish it, and then spend the last 5 minutes to talk about in detail about your research/design project. I don't think it can be linear that you do first 3 minutes of case study and then last 6 minutes of your project, because if you are talking to an outside audience, somebody's looking at your YouTube link, and you lost him or her in the first 2 minutes, that, oh, this is about a case study, there's nothing interesting. Or let's say you are sending the YouTube video to a possible funder for a project, or a grant institution who is going to grant $3,000 for a quick student project, research project. And if the organization is only hearing about case study in the first 2 minutes, you lost it. They may not even, they will stop and go to the next presentation. So you cannot simply do as a complete linear case study and then your project. That flow does not highlight your project. So I want you to think about these things, that in what ways your project is highlighted, your discourses, your methods, your contexts are highlighted, you are highlighted. And that's the task, that's the exercise. And that's why I said it would need organization of your thoughts. It may not need production of new content, other than if you are printing them out and putting them together. It would need time to think about, should I just keep discourses separate, methods separate, and then the context in 3 different rows and talk about it? Can I start mixing them and connecting them? And I want you to spend in these exercises and thinking, rather than finding out fine and refined and cool ways of doing videos. And that's why I was telling that the video could be rough and sketchy. A common mistake students do in the video is that they're looking at the slides, printed out slides, and the video is from a distance, and they're looking at a lot of images and text, and neither the images nor the text, anything is clear, and it's always from a distance. So I want you to, even if you're using video, whether it's handheld devices or video on a tripod, or even if you're doing voiceovers using PowerPoint, I want you to zoom in and out, zoom into certain diagrams or parts of the diagrams and talk, so that that what you are talking is connected to what you are showing. I mean, it cannot be a 2-minute ramble on certain things, looking at every material, 16-slide spread where I really don't get to see or understand anything. So I want to spend your time on those things. And that's why I think the handheld devices is quick and easy, because it's integrated with your hand and mind. You don't have to find ways to figure out how to do the zoom in, zoom out. So don't spend too much time on the technique. More spend time on organizing your thought, preparing your presentation, preparing your verbal presentation, and just experimenting doing the video.
Thank you. That was very clear, actually. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Other questions? Yeah, so Max was asking, I think he's clear now, that when I was telling your project, your discourse, your method, your context, so he asked, by your project, do you mean our case study? So the answer is no, not your case study. By your project, I mean your research project that you have been thinking and developing on your own. Your topic of interest, not the case study. Okay.
Okay, but the entire have been drawn from like what I believe the case study is and all of their kind of like analysis. I haven't exactly.
That's fine. The case studies and its analysis helped you develop the topic, but you doesn't have to exactly present it in that way.
Okay.
But that also does. I'm not saying you don't. I should not hear anything about the case study. I'm talking about how to present it. I mean, I'm saying that don't spend 60 to 70% of the video on the case study and 20 to 30% on your topic. You can say that this is my topic, this is my position, and I looked into this case study and how they looked into their project helped me do that. That's fair.
100. We were talking about Nora, and I think I got lost, but I found. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Any other question? Anyone else? All right, if there's no other question, I don't have any new content, so we will wrap it up. Just one thing, I know some of you are behind assignment 3 and some of the discussions. So I just wanted to kind of outline the priorities that you should focus on. So I don't think at this time it would be strategic to go back and do the discussion forums. So I would say that focus on finishing assignment 3 as soon as possible, and then get all the materials 1, 2, and 3 together and focus on producing the video. Okay. Any draft videos need to be, and it's a requirement, need to be submitted by 15th for if you want feedback from me. Because otherwise the following week will become, I need 2 to 3 days to look at the videos and give you feedback, and then you need 2 to 3 days, and so that becomes 6, 7 days, right, to refine the video and submit. So any research video after 15th, I am not going to comment on unless I finish everything, all the videos that have been submitted by 15th, and then if I have time. And I'm just doing that restriction so that it's useful for you. The feedback I give you is useful for you. So if I will get to you, if you submit your video draft after 15th, but only after I finish others who have submitted by 15th, and then if I have time to do that. Okay, so tomorrow midnight, research presentation 3, and I will accept some late research presentations 3, but I would kind of prorate or curve the grading a little bit for late submissions. But research video draft, I'm not going to accept after Sunday the 15th. And then the final video will be due by Sunday the 22nd. And I'm extending that by a day or two just so that you have a little more time. I will be crunched for grading the final and then tallying everything, but I'm going to do that so to submit all your final grades by 25th. The final submissions need to happen. Any leftover material, research video, all submissions need to happen by Sunday, the 22nd. After 22nd, I'm not going to accept any submissions.
What about missed forum stuff, discussion forum stuff?
22nd.
So I missed posting something on one of the forums. So I've actually done the readings. I just haven't had a chance to write something there. I could still post something on there.
You can post
like
it.
Week 6
again. Yes, you can post it. As long as it is by 22nd, I will consider it. I will mark you down for late submission because that's fair to the class and
of course
to everyone. Nevertheless, like I said, I think strategically and in terms of the overall distribution of the grade, I think the priority and the focus at this point should be presentation 3 finishing, research video draft, and then final, submitting them on time, and then missed forums. Okay, but there are 2 hard deadlines at this time. Research video draft by 15th, and then research video final, and any other missed things by 22nd.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any questions? Any other question?
On my presentation, I don't have updates. I wanted to update it. Just I was asking questions on it. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. So I responded to some extent. If you think that that's enough, okay, that's fine. If you think that you need more clarification or feedback, if you could please email me with the questions again, and if you restate some of the things you talked about today, and if you want to elaborate on that, that would be helpful for me to respond to if you need more feedback or comment. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Great.
Yeah. Any last words? All right. So work on your things. I know you'll be busy with your finishing other classes, and definitely the 2 assignments left for this class. So use your time accordingly and strategically. Please take some time to complete the course evaluations like you do in all classes. I am interested in good critical feedback, so I would like to know personally what worked, and we are constantly developing and tweaking and refining the class in connection with the other curriculum, especially thesis and ADS, so that it really becomes helpful when you go into ADS and useful. So I would like to know what really worked, what you think were the strengths of the class, and I would also like to know what you thought didn't work or how it can improve. And it would help me to kind of hear both sides. It doesn't help me to hear just, oh, it was great and fine. On the other side, I mean, it was a complete waste of time. So I would like to know, like you have done throughout the class and discussions, critique the class, critique my teaching, critique the assignments, and I would appreciate some content and critical feedback, both in terms of strengths or things which worked and helped you, and also if you have certain critique in terms of improving teaching methodology, using online feedback, class materials, and I look forward to that. So please take some time to finish the course evaluation, work on your assignments. I will remind you on the deadlines, and as always, if you have any question in the middle, please feel free to email me. Okay. And one last thing, that next week, if you have any question or if you want to run something by quickly, if you can let me know by 15th that if you want a quick phone call or if you want a quick one-on-one hangout session, we can possibly arrange that and do that. And this is beyond email discussions. Email, you can always do that. We can schedule something. There will be no formal class coming Monday, but I'm open and we can schedule some quick 5-10 minute conversation if that you think that might help you. Okay, but I need to know those by 15th so that we can schedule those as we go on, and we can schedule those by 18th, because after that you really need time to finish everything. All right, thank you so much. It was good having you in the class, and your input and your critique and your discussions were great. I hope, though challenging, I know there were a lot of new ways of thinking, learning. I hope that in this class and beyond, the material and some of the lessons and the techniques you have learned will be helpful to you. Thanks a lot. See you around.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.